She healed a wolf bleeding under the old stones, unaware the Alpha King would kneel for her fate. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The storm rolled across the old stones like a living thing, brushing cold air through the cracks as Evelyn Hart pushed deeper into the forgotten trail. Her breath came out in pale threads, scattering into the night. She shouldn't have been out here, not this late, not with the wind turning sharp and the sky folding into darker shades. But then she heard it, a low, broken sound beneath the ruins. Not a growl, not quite, more like someone trying to breathe through pain. Evelyn's boots scraped softly as she crouched by the collapsed archway. The world narrowed to the faint smell of wet earth, old moss, and something she couldn't place, like heat trapped under fur. Her flashlight flicked across the stone floor and landed on a shape curled tight against a boulder. A wolf. Huge. Too large for any species she knew. Its coat, silver dusted with darker streaks, was matted along one flank. Not with anything violent, just tangled debris, dirt, and the dull stiffness of exhaustion. A faint tremor ran through its frame, not from fear, but from enduring the cold too long. It's okay, Evelyn whispered, letting her voice fall low and steady. Her words floated into the storm's hush. The wolf's ears twitched. Its eyes opened, sharp, pale, reflecting the beam of her light. He didn't snarl. He didn't bare teeth. He simply watched her, as if measuring the space between bravery and trust. Evelyn eased closer, keeping her palms visible. You're stuck, aren't you? A slab of stone had pinned part of his hind leg. Not crushed, just trapping him in a way he couldn't shift free. She pressed her shoulder to the slab, pushing with all the strength her slim frame could offer. The stone groaned, grit sliding. The wolf flinched, but didn't strike. He just held her gaze, steady. Silent. Almost, Evelyn muttered, breath tightening. With one more push, the slab slid enough for him to pull free. He shifted his weight cautiously, testing the leg. No blood. No open wound. Only strain, cold, and exhaustion. You poor thing, she murmured. Her hand hovered before touching the thick fur along his neck. Warm. Surprisingly warm against the freezing air. The wolf lowered his head slightly, not submission, just acknowledgement. Wind swept through the ruins again, lifting her hair and carrying the soft, slow exhale from the creature beside her. She draped her coat across his shoulders, letting it settle over the rise and fall of his breath. You're gonna be all right, she said gently. I've got you. The storm rumbled overhead, but in the quiet beneath the old stones, something else stirred, something watching her with a depth she didn't yet understand. The wolf stayed still beneath the coat, its breath warming the air in slow waves as Evelyn knelt beside him, listening to the storm drag across the treeline above. The old stones around them hummed faintly with the wind, carrying a low echo that felt older than the forest itself. She brushed a few leaves away from his side, checking the leg that had been pinned. The muscles trembled from strain, but there was no sign of further injury. You are going to be okay, she whispered, not sure why she felt the need to speak softly, as if the ruins might be listening. The wolf blinked once, slow and deliberate, like someone acknowledging a promise. Snowflakes drifted through the open arches, melting the moment they touched his warm fur. Evelyn tugged her backpack closer, rummaging through the side pocket for a small bundle of gauze and a water bottle. Just a little cleanup, she murmured. When she dampened the cloth and touched it to his leg, he tensed, but only for a moment. His eyes, pale and focused, stayed on her with a strange patience. Good boy, she said automatically, then winced. Sorry, you are not. Well, you are clearly not a dog. The wolf let out a low sound that was not a growl, more like a quiet huff, almost amused. She could not help smiling. The storm eased a little, enough to let the forest breathe again. Branches shook wet snow loose, and a faint scent of pine pushed through the cold air. Evelyn adjusted the coat around the wolf's shoulders, pulling it high enough to shield him from the draft slipping under the broken stones. We will wait out the storm, she said. Then I can help you get somewhere safer. The wolf glanced toward the dark tree line beyond the ruins, then back at her, as if weighing his own choices against hers. He shifted slightly, careful not to startle her, and laid his head on his paws. She watched his chest rise and fall, steady and powerful, even in exhaustion. A thin mist curled from his breath, catching the weak light of her flashlight. Time passed slowly in the shelter of the old stones. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself as the temperature dipped again. Her fingers had gone stiff, and she rubbed them together to coax some warmth back. The wolf noticed. His ear twitched, and then he shifted closer, just enough that the heat radiating from his body brushed her side. "You are very considerate for a wild animal," she whispered. The wolf's gaze met hers again, calm and steady. She felt something unfamiliar ripple through her chest, a quiet understanding that did not need words. Outside, the wind paused. A rare stillness settled over the ruins, as if the night itself held its breath. Evelyn leaned back against the stone, the cold roughness grounding her as the wolf rested beside her. "We are going to be fine," she said softly. And for reasons she could not explain, she believed it. The storm softened into a distant murmur, leaving the ruins wrapped in a quieter kind of darkness. Evelyn shifted her weight, her back pressed to the cool stone as she checked on the wolf again. His breathing had settled into a deep, steady rhythm, warm enough that she felt it against her arm each time he exhaled. The coat she had draped over him had slipped slightly, and she reached out to adjust it. The wolf's fur brushed her fingertips, thick and warm, carrying a faint scent of pine and something unfamiliar, like sunlight trapped in winter air. His ears twitched as she touched the fabric, but he did not move away. Instead, he lifted his head just enough to glance at her, as if making sure she was still there. "I am not going anywhere," she whispered. The flashlight rested on a rock beside her, its beam dimming. But steady. Shadows stretched long across the uneven ground, flickering as the wind stirred. The old stones rose around them like broken ribs, sheltering them from the worst of the cold. Evelyn rubbed her hands together again. The temperature had dipped more than she expected, the night settling in with a slow, persistent chill. Her breath curled into the air, thin and white. The wolf watched her shiver. He shifted his body with careful, deliberate movement, closing the small space between them until his warmth brushed her side again. She let out a soft breath. "Thank you," she murmured, surprised at how natural it felt to speak to him like a companion rather than a wild creature. A branch snapped somewhere beyond the ruins. Not sharp or threatening, just the distant crack of settling wood under snow. Evelyn's gaze flicked toward the tree line. The forest stood still, tall silhouettes swaying gently. She felt the subtle thump of the wolf's heartbeat through the stones beneath them, steady and grounding. It gave her something to latch onto, a reminder that she was not alone out here. "When the sun comes up, we will get you home," she said. "Wherever that is." His ears lifted slightly, as if he understood. The coat shifted again as he lifted his head and looked toward the open archway. His eyes glowed faintly in the low light, pale and clear, holding something that felt almost thoughtful. He seemed to be listening to the forest, tracing sounds she could not hear. Then he settled again, resting his head on his paws. Evelyn reached for another piece of gauze, dabbing gently at the dirt collected along his leg. He stayed still, allowing her hands to work. Trust, quiet and cautious, grew in the silence between them. The air stirred softly, brushing her hair across her cheek. She tucked it back and leaned her shoulder against the stone, letting the warmth of the wolf seep into her bones. Above them, the sky shifted from deep black to a softer blue, the first hint of dawn brushing the horizon. Evelyn blinked slowly, her body relaxing for the first time in hours. "We made it through the night," she whispered. The wolf lifted his head once more, meeting her eyes with a calm that felt older than the ruins themselves. The pale blue of early morning gathered slowly across the treetops, brushing its quiet light into the ruins where Evelyn sat with the wolf at her side. The air felt different now, lighter, as if the long night had loosened its hold on the forest. Frost clung to the edges of the stones, glimmering softly as the sky brightened. Evelyn stretched her stiff legs, careful not to disturb the wolf as he shifted his weight and tested the strain in his muscles. He placed one paw forward, then paused, as if listening to his own body before moving again. "Easy," she murmured. There is no rush. He lifted his head, ears pricking toward the open archway. A faint breeze slipped through, carrying the distant scent of pine needles warming in the early sun. Evelyn followed his gaze. The storm clouds had drifted away, leaving behind a clean sky streaked with gold. She picked up her backpack and slung it over one shoulder. "I can help you walk," she said softly, "just until you find your path." The wolf stepped forward, slow but steady. His leg held his weight, although Evelyn could see the careful balance in every movement. He glanced back at her, as if confirming that she was coming too. She smiled. "All right, I am with you." They moved together through the archway and into the forest. Soft snow cushioned their steps. Sunlight filtered through the branches, scattering bright patches across the ground. The wolf walked close enough that Evelyn could feel the brush of his fur against her coat. His warmth lingered even in the cold morning air. Every few steps, he paused to listen. His ears swiveled, tracing sounds too faint for her to detect. Squirrels, wind, the distant call of a bird waking for the day. Evelyn watched him with growing admiration. Even injured, he carried a quiet strength, something grounded and ancient. She found herself speaking without thinking. "You must live somewhere nearby. Wolves do not usually wander this close to the ruins." The wolf lifted his head at the word wolves, as if the idea tasted strange to him. He kept walking, but his gaze held a thoughtful depth that she could not quite understand. They reached a fallen log, and he stopped. Evelyn stepped ahead and brushed snow away to check the footing. "We can go around," she said. "No need to climb." She turned to guide him, but the wolf surprised her. He stepped closer and gently nudged her hand with his nose. It was not a push, more like a quiet gesture meant to reassure her instead of himself. She felt a soft warmth rise in her chest. "You are something else," she whispered. The wolf moved beside her again, matching her pace as they continued through the brightening forest. Branches rustled overhead. A trail of small paw prints dotted the snow where a fox had passed in the early morning. Evelyn breathed in the crisp air, her tension slipping away with each step. For the first time since the storm began, she felt the day opening in front of them. Safe, quiet, possible. She looked at the wolf again. His eyes met hers with calm recognition, as if he saw more in her than she realized. The forest stretched ahead, waiting for whatever came next. Morning light filtered warmly through the forest canopy, softening the sharp edges of the night before. Evelyn walked beside the wolf, matching his steady pace as the snow began to melt under the touch of the rising sun. Each patch of sunlight shimmered across his silver fur, turning it almost luminous. His breathing remained even, but she could see the faint stiffness in his stride, the reminder of the stone that had pinned him. "You are doing great," she said gently. The wolf flicked an ear in her direction, acknowledging her words without slowing. His steps were cautious but sure, guided by an instinct she could not see. Soon they reached a small clearing where the forest opened just enough to let the sky through. The ground was carpeted in soft needles from the pines overhead, and the light here was brighter, warmer. Evelyn paused, letting the peaceful stillness settle over them. The wolf circled once, then lowered himself carefully onto the soft ground. He let out a slow breath, one that sounded almost relieved. Evelyn sat beside him, pulling her backpack around to her lap. "Let me check your leg again," she said. The wolf lifted it slightly, enough for her to see the swelling had gone down. She soaked a cloth with the last of her water and gently cleaned away the dirt that had gathered during their walk. His fur caught the light like frost catching the first hint of morning heat. She worked slowly, letting her touch stay light and patient. "You heal fast," she murmured. "Faster than anything I have treated before." The wolf's eyes met hers, steady and calm, as if he had been waiting for her to notice. Evelyn lowered the cloth and tilted her head, studying him. "You are not an ordinary wolf, are you?" His gaze shifted toward the trees, almost thoughtful. The clearing fell into a soft hush, the kind that makes a person hold their breath without realizing. A bird landed on a branch above them, shaking off a small flurry of snow, then flew away with a gentle flutter. Evelyn leaned back on her hands, feeling the cool earth beneath her palms. "Last night," she said slowly, "I thought you were scared, but now I am starting to think you were just tired, like something heavy had been following you for a long time." The wolf lifted his head, watching her with eyes that seemed to understand more than she could put into words. He shifted closer, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the warmth radiating from his side. She did not move away. Something about his presence felt grounding, as if the forest itself had lent her a companion for reasons she could not yet grasp. "Do you have a home?" she asked softly. "A pack." The wolf lowered his head again, but his ears flicked at the mention of home. A gentle wind swept through the clearing, stirring the branches above and carrying a faint scent Evelyn could not identify, like distant firewood mixed with clean frost. The wolf lifted his nose, breathing it in with quiet focus. Something called to him, something far beyond her understanding. Then he looked back at her, calm, present, choosing, for now, to stay. Evelyn smiled, a small, warm curve of her lips. "All right," she whispered. "We will rest here a little longer." And in the quiet of the clearing, under the soft gold of the early sun, she felt the unspoken connection between them deepen, fragile and real as morning light. Sun warmed the clearing gently, brushing soft gold across the pine needles as Evelyn watched the wolf rest beside her, his breath slow and even. The quiet felt deeper now, almost thoughtful, as if the forest itself was waiting for something to unfold. She hugged her knees lightly, letting her gaze trail over his silver fur as he lifted his head to study the morning light. "You look better," she said softly. "Stronger." The wolf blinked once, steady and calm, but there was a flicker behind his eyes, something she had noticed earlier but could not name. It felt like a question he was holding, waiting for the right moment to ask. A distant breeze stirred the branches above, scattering tiny specks of snow that shimmered like dust in the sunlight. Evelyn watched them fall, then rested her hand gently on the wolf's side. His warmth radiated through her palm, reassuring and steady. He did not move away. Instead, he shifted slightly closer, pressing just enough for her to understand that the gesture was deliberate. "I do not know why you chose to trust me," she murmured, "but I am glad you did." The wolf's ears twitched, and he lifted his head, sensing something beyond the clearing. Evelyn followed his gaze, her eyes narrowing to focus on the subtle shift in the air. Nothing moved, but she felt it too, a faint tension, a ripple along the quiet. "Is someone out there?" she whispered. The wolf did not growl or posture. Instead, he stood slowly, testing his healing leg. He remained calm, but alert, like a guardian reading the forest with instincts far sharper than hers. Evelyn rose with him. Her hand hovered near his shoulder, careful not to crowd him. "If you need to go," she said, "I understand." The wolf looked back at her, and for a moment the world seemed to hold still. His pale eyes reflected the morning light, clear as frost, and just as deep. Something passed between them, wordless, but real. He stepped toward her and gently pressed his forehead against her arm. The touch was careful, steady, and warm. Evelyn froze, breath catching softly. It was not a push, not a plea, more like an acknowledgement, honest and unguarded, as if he was thanking her with the only language he had. She lifted her hand and let it rest on his neck, feeling the strong muscles beneath the thick fur. "You are welcome," she whispered. The breeze shifted again, carrying a faint sound, distant footsteps, maybe, or the soft echo of something moving through deeper woods. The wolf's ears lifted sharply, his body stilled, reading the forest with a focus that sharpened every line of him. He was not afraid, but he was aware. Evelyn felt her heartbeat quicken. "Is it your pack?" she asked. The wolf did not answer, of course, but his eyes softened when he glanced at her again. Then he stepped closer and nudged her hand gently, almost guiding her back toward the fallen log where they had rested earlier, as if urging her to stay behind him. "You are protecting me now," she realized quietly. The wolf took a single step forward, positioning himself between her and the forest's unseen movement. Sunlight cut through the trees, landing in a bright line across his back, turning his fur into a silver blaze. Evelyn felt a strange calm settle over her, grounded by his presence. Whatever was approaching, the wolf was ready to face it, not as a wounded creature, but as something far greater. And she understood, in that fragile, breathless moment, that he had been carrying a secret long before she found him under the old stones. The sound in the forest grew clearer, not loud, but steady, like footsteps softened by snow. Evelyn stood behind the wolf, her breath held without meaning to, watching the way his posture changed. He was no longer simply alert. He was composed, centered, as if every inch of him recognized what approached. Sunlight drifted across the clearing in warm bands, catching on the frost and scattering tiny sparkles across the wolf's fur. He lifted his head slightly, eyes fixed on the far edge of the trees. "Do you know who it is?" Evelyn whispered. The wolf did not look back at her, yet she felt the answer in the calm rise and fall of his breath. Yes. The air carried a faint scent then, subtle but distinct, something like cool stone mixed with distant firelight. It felt ancient, familiar to him in a way Evelyn could sense, but not understand. A figure appeared between the trees. Not a threat, not rushing, simply walking with deliberate grace. It was another wolf, though smaller and lighter in build, with pale fur dusted in gold. The newcomer paused at the edge of the clearing, head low, body relaxed but respectful. Evelyn glanced between them, feeling tension without fear, like watching two parts of a story she had not been told come together. The silver wolf stepped forward, not limping now, standing tall despite the night he had endured. His tail lifted once, slow, in what felt like a silent command or reassurance. The golden wolf responded with a soft sound, a gentle note that carried no danger. It felt more like greeting than warning. Evelyn exhaled, unaware she had been holding her breath. "Is this your friend?" she asked softly. The silver wolf glanced back at her, and something warm flickered in his eyes. He took a step toward her, brushing his shoulder lightly against her hand before turning back to the newcomer. The touch felt intentional, reassuring. Then the golden wolf looked at Evelyn too, eyes bright with curiosity. He stepped closer, slow and careful, as if reading her presence the way the silver wolf had. Evelyn crouched slightly, offering her hand with her fingers relaxed. "Hello," she whispered. The golden wolf sniffed the air, then dipped his head politely, almost bowing. Evelyn blinked, startled by the gesture. "They are very different from regular wolves," she murmured under her breath. The silver wolf stood between her and the golden wolf, not to block, but to introduce, a silent acknowledgement of trust. The golden wolf made another soft sound, almost musical this time, then stepped back as if waiting for a signal. The silver wolf lifted his head toward the deeper forest, and Evelyn felt the shift in the air again. A choice, a calling, a path only he truly understood. Her heart tightened slightly. "You have to go, do you not?" she asked quietly. The silver wolf turned to face her fully. The sunlight caught his eyes, turning them clear as morning ice. He stepped close and gently pressed his forehead to her palm. The warmth of him, steady and strong, radiated through her hand and into her chest. Gratitude, recognition, goodbye, but not an ending. She swallowed, her voice barely a breath. "Thank you for letting me help you." The golden wolf waited at the forest's edge. The silver wolf gave one last look at her, deep and lingering, then turned toward the trees, walking with a strength she had not seen before. Evelyn watched him go, standing very still as his silver coat disappeared into the light. And though the clearing grew quiet again, she felt the moment reshape the air around her, as if she had stepped into a story much larger than she knew. The forest closed behind the two wolves as they vanished into the trees, leaving the clearing wrapped in a stillness that felt almost unreal. Evelyn remained where she stood, her hand hovering in the air, as if the warmth of the silver wolf's touch still lingered on her palm. The sun climbed higher, soft light spilling across the ground like a gentle reminder that morning had fully arrived. Yet she felt suspended in a moment that did not belong to the ordinary world. A cool breeze drifted through the clearing, stirring the pine needles at her feet. Evelyn took a slow breath, grounding herself as she listened to the quiet around her. It felt different now, as if the forest itself had acknowledged her presence in a new way. She knelt where the wolf had been moments earlier and touched the soft indentation in the ground. The earth was still warm. "Goodbye," she whispered to the empty space. Not sad, just full. She gathered her backpack and brushed dirt from her knees before standing again. Her legs felt steady, but her chest carried a faint tremor, the echo of something she could not yet name. She turned toward the path leading back through the trees, expecting the morning to unfold into something ordinary at last. But after only a few steps, she paused. A faint sound rose through the forest. Not footsteps this time. Something lighter, like the gentle chime of wind moving across distant stones. Evelyn tilted her head, listening. The sound flowed toward her and then fell silent, leaving an impression rather than a direction. "What are you trying to tell me?" she murmured, half expecting no answer. A single feather drifted down from above. White. Soft. It landed at her feet without any sign of a bird in the sky. She crouched and picked it up, turning it gently between her fingers. It carried a faint warmth, almost like the lingering heat of a hand that had just held it. She glanced back toward the deeper forest, where the two wolves had disappeared. The golden wolf's curiosity, the silver wolf's quiet acknowledgement, the way he had stood between her and the unknown. All of it formed a pattern she could feel, but not yet understand. She tucked the feather into her backpack side pocket and continued walking. As she moved beneath the towering pines, shafts of sunlight filtered down, breaking across her face like a series of small revelations. Every so often she thought she heard something, soft breathing, distant brushing of fur, or the faint echo of a presence that remained just out of sight. When she glanced over her shoulder, there was never anything there. Yet she felt watched in a way that did not frighten her. Guarded rather than followed. Cherished rather than observed. The trail bent to the left, opening into a narrow path lined with snow-tipped ferns. Evelyn stepped carefully, letting her fingertips brush the frost. Her breath plumed in front of her, white and soft. "I wonder who you really are," she whispered to the forest. The silence that answered was gentle, almost tender, the kind of silence that carries secrets but refuses to harm. She looked up toward the canopy, where sunlight glowed golden and alive. Something in that glow reminded her of the silver wolf's eyes, clear and steady, carrying a depth she had never seen in any creature before. She felt a shiver run through her, not fear, but a quiet certainty. Their story was not finished. The forest knew it. She knew it. And somewhere ahead, the silver wolf knew it too. The path narrowed as Evelyn continued forward, pine branches brushing softly against her shoulders while the scent of frost and distant wood smoke drifted through the air. Something had shifted in the forest, though she could not explain how she knew. A stillness settled between the trees, not empty, but expectant, as if the world around her held its breath. She reached a small rise where the sunlight broke through in a wide, golden beam. Snow sparkled like powdered glass across the ground. Evelyn stepped into the light and let its warmth sink into her skin. Her breath steadied, turning the cold morning air into soft white clouds. "Where are you now?" she whispered into the quiet. As if in answer, a faint rustle came from behind her. She turned, expecting perhaps a deer or the golden wolf returning on silent feet. But the forest remained empty, calm, untouched. She took a few steps back down the rise, her boots crunching lightly in the snow. Then she stopped. A figure stood at the far edge of the trees. Not a wolf this time. A man. Tall, broad shoulders, silver hair that caught the weak sun like metal waking into light. Evelyn froze, her heartbeat fluttering once before settling into a deeper rhythm. The man stepped forward, slow and steady, as if he feared startling her. His clothing seemed woven from shadows and winter light, simple yet somehow regal. But it was his eyes that rooted her to the spot, pale, clear, unmistakable. She knew those eyes. She had looked into them beneath the old stones. She had trusted them long before she knew they belonged to more than a wounded creature. "It cannot be," she breathed. The man stopped a few paces away, the air between them warm despite the cold morning. He bowed his head slightly, not in grandeur, but in quiet respect. "Evelyn Hart," he said, his voice deep and steady, carrying the same calm she had felt through his breath the night before. "You saved my life." She stared at him, words slipping from her grasp. You were the wolf." He nodded once, the movement gentle, almost humble. "My name is Kale," he said. "In my realm, they call me Alpha King. But to you, I am simply the one you chose to help when you could have walked away." The pieces clicked into place, his impossible strength, his warmth, the intelligence in his eyes, the way the golden wolf had bowed in the clearing. Evelyn exhaled slowly, her breath trembling. "Why reveal yourself now?" Kale took one more step toward her, though his posture remained soft, careful. "Because I owe you a truth," he said. "And a promise." A quiet breeze moved around them, lifting a few strands of her hair. Kale lowered to one knee before her, the snow around him glowing in the light. He bowed his head, not out of duty, but sincerity. I kneel not as a king, he said softly, but as a life you chose to save. Your compassion has bound our fates, Evelyn Hart. She felt her heart tighten, not with fear, but with a quiet, profound clarity. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. Cale lifted his gaze, those pale eyes steady on hers. In them she saw the wolf she had comforted, the strength she had walked beside, and the mystery she had unknowingly stepped into. The world around them fell silent, holding their moment like breath suspended in cold morning light.